want to live when you get older? In a senior citizens community? Or what if you could collaborate with friends to build a new neighborhood of sorts that also included younger people and younger families? Wow, that sounds like an old fashioned neighborhood. Architect and social architect Charles Chuck Durrett has been on the cutting edge of co-housing for decades. Now, capturing a conversation with architect Charles Durrett is like trying to catch a busy bird in flight. It's rare. So some of this recording is visually shot on the go, so to speak. But it was fantastic to be able to converse with this godfather of co-housing in America. Early on in Chuck Durrett's career, he was influenced by co-housing design in Denmark and how older people could live in managed communities and one that is intergenerational, a community designed by those that live there. Posted below, I will list Charles Durrett's books, which set up the game plan for intergenerational co-housing, and his new writings since this recording on how to better house the homeless. After you hear what Charles Durrett has to say about his co-housing projects and his visionary approaches, you might say to yourself, in a good way, there goes the neighborhood where you could design your age.
So you haven't read Senior Co-Housing yet.
No, no,
Okay. Well, you're going to want to get that one under your
no.
belt.
You're right, and I have it right here,
There you go. There it is.
and I have been trying to scan it just in terms of when we spoke and trying to finish this book by scheduling this. So this is on my shoulders that I, could have done this interview a little bit later. But
Well, you can call me again if you want to.
all right.
Um, well, affordability, like I say, my MO is that if, 20 or 30 families come to the table, I always feel like I have to meet their needs. So for example, I just finished a 24 unit project in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and they had 6 people who had to have brand new houses for under 150,000. And I don't know if you're familiar with the real estate market, but that's like taking a rabbit out of a hat. But I love those challenges, frankly, and we managed to do it. Actually, those 6 houses cost 153,000 by the time we were all done. And 65-year-old church lady who probably made about $25,000 a year at most. Just really stellar people that I really wanted to get into the project. And so we worked backwards and made places that, and she was a renter her whole life. And currently at 65, she was renting an apartment in a student housing project. So if you can imagine this 65-year-old church lady who's listening to these rowdy college kids come home on a Saturday night, it was just like a perfect storm, and she was very unhappy. Now she lives in a phenomenal senior co-housing. You can Google it. It's called Stillwater. It's actually called Oak Creek Commons in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And so anyway, that's affordability. I work backwards, whatever they can afford. You remember the first project we did in the U.S. was the 23 out of 26 households were first-time home buyers. So, that was that we've always had a crunch on the affordable side. What was your other question?
Footage are you talking?
Oh, the square footage. Many of these people are moving out of 1,500 square foot. Our typical senior co-housing house runs about 1,000 square feet, but they have this large 4,000 square foot common house. So they have 1,000 private house, 4,000 common house. So they really have what feels like a 5,000 square foot house now. I mean, with the gourmet kitchen and all the rest. So, it's a whole nother math. It's a whole nother math.
So there's someone there that is kind of the, I guess, the manager that kind of keeps all these balls going in the air.
Well, through the planning of the project, either me or Catherine McCammon is helping the group for sure, or there's other people now around the U.S. who are learning how to help co-housing groups. I really don't recommend that people do it without some assistance, because those are the ones that do get a little screwed up. Basically, the houses get too big, the common house gets too small. Lots of things that make it not very not as functional as it could be. But no, there's no manager living on site. Like I said, they're completely self-managed.
Okay, so basically there's an operating manual in terms of how this whole thing works that you, in essence,
well, that book you had in your hand is pretty much it.
Is the operating manual. Got it. Yeah. So what opportunities do you see where co-housing could attract more financial entities? Meaning, lenders for developers and banks that would recognize this.
Well, there's, all of co-housing has represented from the beginning a bit of culture change. In other words, people have to sort of imagine that they're planning a new neighborhood to begin with. I mean, that's culture change. Imagine planning a new neighborhood without hierarchy, even in the planning of it. That's culture change. In other words, there's no big bad boss who's telling, everybody it's going to be like this. And the culture change for developers, there's an old saying that by the time you learn the tricks of the trade, you have the attitude of the trade. And the attitude for the average developer is control, control, control. And you have to give that up a little bit, not because you want to make less profit, or not because you don't want a good product. You want all of that. But you have to realize in co-housing math, the basic co-housing math is 1 + 1 = 3. In other words, I have an idea, you have an idea, and together we come up with a third idea that's better than either of ours. Well, that seems to be so difficult for the average developer to put it on the table. So the scenario I see is the scenario where developers choose to educate themselves much more than they are now, just like future residents choose to educate themselves much more than they are when they step into the new project. And the kinds of things that new residents are educating themselves on are things like nonviolent communication, just basic human stuff, where just because you disagree with me, Tuck, doesn't mean that you're a bad guy, and I need to speak with you just as respectfully as if you did agree with me, because that's the only way we're ever going to get to the number 3 as a good idea. And the average developer has to imagine that they need to work with people in a much more collaborative space. Now, the funny thing about that is when we've pulled that off with developers, which we have quite often. I mean, in other words, there's a couple of developers who understand this stuff, and there's huge advantages for the developers. I mean, number one, they get working capital out of the future residents. That's a big deal. They don't have to borrow as much money. They don't have to risk as much money. Again, it's collaborative. So, the future residents pay a lot of their way. And we like it that way, because if they have skin in the game, they're going to take the game a lot more seriously than if they're just playing hobby housing neighborhood thing. Okay. So the other thing that the developers get out of it is they get, much easier approvals from the city municipalities when the future residents are championing the project and it's not the developer who's championing the project. And 3, they get a lot easier bank financing when the bank sees that there's all these ready buyers compared to a lot of risk. So it can be win-win, but mostly what developers have to do is give up that control attitude.
So is there in your book a game plan that helps individuals figure out how to work with developers, to work with lenders? Is there's kind of like a map of that?
Well, there's a little bit more of a map in my new book, which is called State of the Art Co-Housing.
Right.
and and um, yeah, I think there's enough of a map to tell you the truth.
This since I've been I've been investigating aging in all kinds of areas and realizing that it's there's a whole new social architecture that's rising where I see it, a new landscape of aging to where just what you said with those people in Denmark, that we want to have fun the next 50 years. Um, you know, I'm realizing that there's such a need for this, and it's constant that I'll be in conversation with somebody, principally a woman, that will say, you know what, I just want a place where I can live with four other female friends, and that there's somebody there that can take care of our health care. I mean, I know that this is old hat to you, but it's a constant conversation that just keeps coming up. And
Loan them your book.
say that again.
Loan them your book, and they won't talk about it as much. They'll start reading about it, and they'll start getting active.
Good, good. And in this new book of yours, if there is sort of a roadmap for it, I think I think that's going to be, I think it's going to be really terrific. Like you just said about certain people's sensibilities, there's a lot of people that, look, I don't want to be around younger people. I want to be, off here. And I'm going, fine, go there. I have an uncle who's 95, and his wife died last year. And he said, his kids, including me, I've been trying to find some place that he could go. And he said, I just don't want to be around a bunch of wheelchairs. I want to be around, he says, younger people give me life, give me vibrancy. And taking that even a little bit further is where I thought it'd be great in the most perfect world that you'd have a co-housing facility, but you'd also have some sort of possibly collaborative program, that could.
Well, Tuck, I think it's even a lot simpler than that, believe it or not. I mean, okay, two things. One is I think about our common dinner tonight. I mean, it was an amazing thing because it's the Day of the Dead today, right? And so they had they organized having everybody bring some photos of their dead relatives and candles, and they just made this elaborate, amazing scene there. And the 8 and 10-year-olds helped the 60-year-olds make dinner, and and set up this whole what do you call it when you have a display of an homage to past generations? I forget what you call that, but anyway, it happens here. They had to hang the lights, and so they had teenagers helping hang the lights, and 6-year-olds who wouldn't climb up on the ladder, but they would hold the ladder. I mean, I don't think you have to overly choreograph that, because I don't think that would work. But I do think that it works if you set the stage. If you you don't have to make it organic. In other words, in my view, the stage does have to be set, and then the behavior will follow. And so that's so I think that's fine. I mean, I think it's doable. There was another thing I was going to say about it. What was it? It was well, I think the biggest thing I was going to say is that I would be surprised if you could choreograph that. And I know for a fact you could set the stage, make it something that just grows naturally, as long as the physical and the social environment has set that up. The social environment would be based on a ton of trust and a ton of cooperation that again, you don't even force, you just set it up so that it just makes sense. There's so many things about cooperation that make sense. So for example, we have 34 houses, but we have one lawnmower. I mean, we have 100 things that we share together, and all that practicality that goes into managing all that stuff builds relationships. And those relationships mean all of a sudden the society as a whole, all 90 of the people that live here, are operating in terms of, well, this makes more sense if we do this together than apart. Oh, this makes more sense if we do it together than apart. And the idea that somebody even here would come along and go, hey, we have to, oh, I know what I was going to say. You keep mentioning that this would be great for the seniors. Well, it's not just great for the seniors, it's great for the 10-year-olds, and it's great for the 15-year-olds, and it's great for the 12-year-olds, basically. So I don't think you can think about it even remotely is it in terms of this would be good for the seniors or this would be good for the kids. This is good for the whole ensemble, the whole life experience, basically. And just like a play. And, everybody has their role and they grow into that role. But they do if the stage makes sense and the costumes make sense, frankly, which means if I'm a 12-year-old, I'm running around and playing and everybody supports that. And and like where I live, I mean, I did mention the 10-year-olds at the pool, but for the most part, the 10-year-olds here even know that if there's 2 or 3 seniors sitting by the pool right now, let's not be rambunctious. Let's just not do it. That took some time, took a couple of years because it was, again, culture change. But once they figured that out, they became more respectful and everybody grew. And and if there's a bunch of 10-year-olds having a great time in there, the seniors know I'm not going to go in there right now because I don't want to cramp their style. So everybody is looking out for each other. That makes sense, but they're not doing it because they have to or anybody's telling them to. They're doing it because they're growing relationships, and the formatting of the landscaping and the proximity has everything to do with that possibility.
So these are people who care about each other rather than
yeah,
and see what the benefit is to their lives by doing so.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Ayn Rand was probably right. We only do things for ourselves, but in this setting, we learn that if I'm going to take care of myself, I better take care of my neighbors too. Earlier, what's old is new again. I was visiting this co-housing not long ago, and I was hanging out with a guy there at Common Dinner who I knew from 10 years ago when he didn't have dementia. Now he has dementia. I sat there and chatted with him, and the conversation ebbed and flowed. And I thought to myself, wow, I think everybody has dementia to some degree because the conversation always ebbs and flows. And all the residents were, quick to tell me that, and I believe it's true, that Kai, is his name, had lived there 10 years longer than he would have lived in independently anywhere else, because he had all these neighbors around who just subtly helped him here and subtly helped him there. But otherwise, he'd be in some kind of memory care. And so I think that's the future, Tuck. We've got to figure out, what's old is new again. Where I grew up, there was a kid in the town who was quite mentally disabled. Everybody helped him here and there. My grandmother in that town was bedridden her last 10 years. 15 different people played a role in her well-being. And because she had a lot of cachet in that town. And I think that's the future. I think that's the future.
I see what you're doing is opening up a really great opportunity. And more so just sunlight. Just somebody can see the horizon. They're going like, damn, I guess we could do that. Look what Charles did. I mean, look what he's doing and how he's showing it. It's like, I see you going like, look over here. And of course you've actually done the work. So, I think, it's a common. I just want to make it, I want to figure out what I can do to grease the skid so it happens faster.
That's what we need. We need people to get the word out so that more seniors will get out of denial. And, I'm getting older. That's fine. You're lucky if you're getting older. Now do something with it.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, nothing is more gratifying than when I see seniors blossom when they get involved with one of these projects, basically, because they see a bright new future. I'm more inspired by the smile on their faces than I am anything else. And that whole dire thing cuts by the wayside right out of the gate. The whole fatalism that mortality gets sidelined, and the hopefulness of possibilities, super. I mean, see, when I get started, not only am I, the first thing I do is I talk about the goals for the community with these, 30 or 40 seniors. And, the things that they bring up are, making life more healthful and, spontaneous socializing, all the things that kids want, for Christ's sake. And then I talk about activities, what serves these goals, and they tend to be practical. I just want to have dinner with my neighbor 3 or 4 times a week, and talk about the issues of the day, whether it's Medicare or some other organ recital, or if it's talking about, hey, some concert that's coming to town, and hey, do you want to go together, kind of thing. I mean, when I see these seniors who start to embrace life anew, it's all the inspiration I need to go to the next project, basically, because I know when I sit down with 20 new seniors, they're going to be dour at the beginning, because it's like, oh, I need to come up with something that beats the dumbass, assisted care that my parents grew old in. I'm not going to do that. But what I do know personally is that, we're going to be 3 months into this thing, and these guys are going to be giddy again. They're going to be old chums with their new friends, and communities more tight knit, because I live in a co-housing with 21 seniors, and I'm astounded by how much support we give each other, whether it's shopping for each other for groceries, you name it, man. We are just like, we do it. And picking up somebody's drugs at the pharmacy, just go for walks with seniors at 7 o'clock in the morning, staying distanced and masked and all the rest. So much amazing support. Every book you read about aging and longevity, happiness always comes down to 3 key factors. One is eat right, mostly light. 2, stay active, mostly low impact. And 3, stay connected, i.e. community.